don't be scared to create your own role. Even in jobs that exist out there, don't be scared to try and evolve it as you go. I think very much when I left school, it was, I'm going to be a scientist. And to be fair, I have ended up being a scientist. But around that, I've been able to build something that didn't even exist before. And industry, academia, business, they are open to that. As long as you can show that that role will bring value and impact, any role out there can and will exist. That's how jobs start. That's how roles, opportunities start.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Pathways to Success with Ali, where we have real conversations about how people actually figure out their careers, not just by highlighting or just showing a reel on Instagram, but everything in between as well. So today I'm joined by Ben Gray, who's built a career in strategy and sustainability whilst working in industry. And we're going to delve into how his career has taken a shape in terms of where he's today and from where he started, really. And hopefully we can find out a little more about his pathway to success. And it'll be interesting to hear from Ben, really. Ben, good to have you. How are you?
Fab, yeah. Thank you, Ali, very much for having me on. Doing very well today. Doing very well and looking forward to the conversation.
Amazing to hear. I know you've been super busy and it's been really difficult to get this on, but I'm glad to have you on. So I just want to start really simple. When people hear about what you do right now, how would you explain it?
Yeah, so my main focus is all about sustainability within science. So really focused on how we do science, how we do research, and how we act sustainably in the lab itself. So labs are very intensive in terms of energy and plastic waste and water waste as well. So it's really a fantastic opportunity to make big sustainability savings, to help save on carbon, to help reduce plastic waste, to help save energy as well. These things often go hand in hand with cost savings, which is always a good thing, but certainly the primary driver for me is that sustainability wins that we can get in science.
Wicked. So I think that would be good for our audience to kind of get an idea of what you're doing right now. But I want the audience to get to know you a bit before we get started properly. So what were you like growing up? What did you find interesting as a young adult or even younger?
Yeah, I've always been very sporty since very, very young. My whole family's very sporty. If you were to ask me at primary school and maybe early stage secondary school, I'd have said, yeah, sports is my thing. And I still very much love sport now. I rode competitively. I rode for England. I've rode for many years. Taking a bit of a break from it now because it's one of those things that I found that you're either in it or you're out of it. It's a big commitment. But really, I would say when I was looking at GCSEs, that's when I realized that I had an interest for science. At first, I always wanted that to relate back into sports. So I was quite interested in doing something like physiotherapy or sports science on this or this kind of thing. And then actually the thing that drew me more towards more directly applied science was not doing too well at biology at GCSE. So that kind of made me think, okay, maybe physio's not the right thing. And I actually really started enjoying chemistry during my A-Levels. I had a really fantastic teacher at Herschel, the same school as you, Ali. I had a really fantastic teacher for A-Level who inspired me into organic chemistry in particular at that time. And yeah, I kind of just went with the flow of going, okay, well, I love chemistry now. I'll pursue that interest.
Fantastic. That's really interesting to hear. Like, for example, you rode for England. That's such a big achievement in itself. So really, that's really amazing to hear. I did not know that. In terms of you're kind of going back a step from your A-Levels to GCSE options, because I know a lot of young people will be taking their GCSE options at some point this year if they haven't already done so. And I think it's a big I think at that age as well, it's a really difficult decision to make. And they make it quite hard because every school's a bit different as well. So were you kind of given guidance on what subjects to choose, or did you go with whatever you felt was right? Or what kind of subjects did you end up doing for your GCSEs, and what pathway did you take in regards to choosing the options?
Yeah, my niece is actually going through this decision time now as well. So I've had a few conversations with her. I think I'm trying to remember what support I had. If I look back, I certainly went for the things that I enjoyed the most. I wasn't necessarily thinking of what my career would be or what I would do in the long term, but I knew. So I remember I definitely selected PE because, as I said, I loved sports. I definitely did ICT because I quite enjoyed working with computers and building websites and this kind of thing. I'm trying to remember as well. I know at Herschel, we had to do a technology, so I choose product design. Again, it was the one I had the most enjoyment doing. It's obviously something I spoke with parents, and I spoke, with teachers during parents' evening and this kind of thing to really think a bit longer term. But for me, it was choosing subjects that I could see I would enjoy, yes, today, but probably enjoy in the longer term as well. So unfortunately, it's funny. I really didn't like history as a student. So it was never considered for me to do it. But I've grown a bit older. I have an interest in history, but it's more as a hobby than something I do as a career. Yeah. Just following a passion, really, I think.
No, I think what you've said is really important, because a lot of students, they listen to, obviously you need to have the conversation at home sometime with parents and decide what's right for you as well. But a lot of students end up doing maybe subjects not what they want to do, let's just say, because it's been pressured from home or what have you. But it's good to hear that you followed the subjects that you enjoyed and you went for the ones that you'd be good at, because naturally you just enjoyed those and do better in anyway. And I think one of the things recently, it's always changing as well, this space, because the government changed some policies this year, or they're bringing in these new changes whereby, there is no, before we had this thing where you had to choose either geography or history, for example. Now it's actually completely optional. You can choose both if you wanted to do it. It's kind of free reign for it. It's almost like, I think it's hard, because then at this point it makes it even harder, because students now need to know exactly what they want to do, and it makes it harder in some ways. But at the same time, I think it's good for the arts and the drama, because it gives them the flexibility to do those additional creative subjects as well.
Agreed.
But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's important for you to speak to your teachers, find out, what the subject is about. And secondly, look into the subject that you enjoy, and then, delve into what it is that involves, and speak to your parents at home and make it a collective decision, because it's important that you know what's right for you and you make an informed decision. I think that'll be my kind of take on that.
Yeah, I like that. And I think the point you pull about the geography and history in particular, I think it's interesting, because it's useful to have a broad range of knowledge, but it's also really useful to have a very directed, very interested in one or two areas kind of knowledge. So I think, again, for me, like, there are some concepts that I've merged together throughout my career. So PE, unfortunately, less so. That's been more of a hobby so far, but certainly mixing science and computing and ICT together has been quite important for me as I've built my own business, really. And I think, you may not necessarily think doing science A-levels and an ICT A-level or GCSE mixes together, but actually there's often a way to integrate those skills into most jobs. Yeah, no,
absolutely. Especially in today's age, I think ICT plays a huge part in every career you go into. But yeah, so now let's say you've done your GCSEs and you're about to pick your A-level options, and that in itself is another milestone, and it's a huge decision you have to make. And I think at this point, a lot of people at Herschel anyway, they just assume the only option is A-levels. But obviously that isn't the case. There are other opportunities as well, and everyone should look into other options that are available to them. But I know you mentioned about chemistry and you enjoyed the organic side of it. Probably the best subject, to be honest, so you did the right thing. But that being said, what were the subjects you picked for A-levels?
Yeah, so I was going to say, during that transition of GCSE to A-level, that at that point my sights was very much on, I'd like to go into physiotherapy. So
right. Okay.
At first, my idea was, okay, so I need to have biology probably, I definitely need PE, and then a couple of other things to help support that. I actually didn't do too well in my biology GCSE at that point, and it kind of opened up my options. It was a bit of a scary day for me personally, going from the A-level selection day after GCSE results, because I thought I had a plan, and then that plan suddenly poofed away, because A-level biology wasn't an option for me. So I ended up doing chemistry, physics, ICT, and PE. So quite science-based with two of them. And then, I suppose ICTs are science as well. They're all sciencey based, because that's always been my strong area and one I've enjoyed. But there was a time where the chemistry and the physics especially were ones I hadn't initially signed up to do. So there was just a little bit of process of, okay, can we make sure you fit into this nicely? Honestly, I'm so glad I picked those options. I may have been the only one who did a physics A-level and not do maths, but I found my way through it. I had to learn logarithms a slightly different way than everyone else in the class did, because they learned it through AS maths, and that wasn't something that I had the joy of doing. But yeah, no, it was good fun. It was good fun.
Yeah, you're right about the physics and maths thing because I feel like it's either chemistry, biology, and psychology, or chemistry, biology, and maths. That's the three kind of trio we have the most popular here. And then secondly is if they're kind of, I don't know, let's say engineering route, they go for physics, maths, and then usually further maths as well. But you mentioned about 4 A levels actually. So did you carry over 4 A levels into 12th into 13 as well?
So I did 4 AS, and then I actually dropped PE for the final A level. So I did the chemistry, physics, and ICT for the full A level.
Okay. It's now what it is. I had the same as you during your my A levels as well. We picked 4 ASs, and then we were kind of encouraged to drop one. In fact, to do 3 A levels in the end. And now it's very different because all the subjects are linear, so you have to carry them into year 13. I mean, you do have the option to drop it, but usually only if you choose to do 4 in the beginning. But generally speaking, majority of the cases, I would just suggest to do 3, just because of how hard it is, and you can maybe tap into that as well. Like, how was it for you in terms of the transition from GCSEs into A levels? Because you've gone from 10, maybe 11 subjects to 3 or 4 subjects, and it's such a different workload as well. So how did you find your kind of A level journey?
For me, I think A levels were probably I enjoyed it the most time at school. For me personally, I really liked to be able to dive deep on the things that I had a passion for. So no offense to history, but I didn't have to spend time learning history anymore. I could focus on the things I was passionate about and the things I enjoyed doing. So for me, it was probably during my school time, the most motivated, engaged, and interested that I was. I know for others, it was actually quite a difficult transition because, you spend, I suppose, the first 11 years of school doing a very wide range of subjects. And then suddenly you're going into focusing on to 3 or to 4. So it was a bit of a transition because as well, you had a bit more free time to do self-learning as well. But because I had subjects I genuinely had an interest and a passion for, that kind of came naturally to me. Interestingly, I did initially try to do 4 A levels in year 13 as well. And after 2 weeks, I was like, no, this isn't going to happen actually, because I could actually feel my interest for the PE side drop a little bit, more the theory side. So you could see my transition from not wanting to be a physiotherapist kind of in that time. But yeah, it was also just, it was too much. And it overall affected how I was feeling about all of it. So then to just drop that one allowed me to really enjoy and focus on those other 3.
That's a good point you raised, because it is true when you have so many different subjects to juggle between, it's good to have focus on the main ones, I think, because sometimes it's good to have 3 really, really good grades as opposed to 4 average kind of grades, I suppose. But yeah, no, brilliant. So now that you've finished your A levels, I know you had your eye on initially physiotherapy. That was a kind of initial hit, I would say, for you, where you had to really think about other options. So now let's say you're at 18. Did you feel like you had a clear plan now? I
knew that chemistry was my way forward. So I knew out of those 3 A levels that I enjoyed chemistry the most. It was the one ICT I found naturally enjoyable as well. Physics a bit less so, but I enjoyed it. So I knew that chemistry was certainly my passion area. And at that time, I was like, well, let's just continue that journey, really. I wasn't thinking directly about what career that would be in. I knew that sustainability was important to me and that chemistry, the knowledge of chemistry could help have sustainability solutions for broader life. I wasn't quite sure where, as you can see. I was kind of just like, I could do something towards sustainability with chemistry. But yeah, I kind of knew at that point that I'd want to do a degree. I'd want it to be in chemistry and see where it takes me, really, at that point.
Okay. So were you given, so you had your A levels, let's say, were you given the option for doing only degree, or did you have other options in front of you to choose from at that time? So what I mean by that is, sorry, like nowadays there's so many different options. Like you can do a degree apprenticeship, you can even do an apprenticeship, different levels, of course, and then you got the degree itself. So did you have those options in front of you at the time?
It was something that was discussed. I must say at school, the vast majority of people did go to university, and it felt to me like it was the natural option, at least personally. One of my friends actually went on to do a long-term apprenticeship with Jaguar Land Rover, which actually was really exciting because they were doing such applied things at such a big company and getting paid to do it at a very young age as well. But yeah, for me, those options were certainly raised to me and said, oh, these things do exist. But with my direct passion for chemistry, it felt like university was always the natural path to take. Because I think, especially for jobs within the chemistry industry, that degree is kind of a tick box exercise to have as well. So yeah.
No, I agree with you. I think majority of people still go down the degree route, and I think it's the most traditional route still. It's just that now there's so many other opportunities. There's a lot of degree apprenticeships out now, so you can actually have your degree paid for and then do an apprenticeship alongside it, whereby you're getting experience as well as getting a degree at the end and getting paid, like you said, about apprenticeships.
Yeah.
So it has changed a lot, and I think people who are listening on this right now, they should also look into the other options available to them. Obviously, I would say if you can't get into degree apprenticeship, because that's probably the best one to go with, then obviously you got the option to do a degree still. So there's no harm in looking into it. That's all.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So now that you kind of finished your A-levels, what did you study at university?
So I studied very straight chemistry. So my degree title is chemistry. I chose to do an integrated master's. So at the time of applying, actually, it was an integrated master's with a year in industry. Because I think I always knew I wanted to do a master's. I think I knew that chemistry was the thing I wanted to do long term. So at that point, I thought I'd go for a master's. Also knowing the fact that if I didn't fancy doing that final year, it was easier at that point to say, okay, I'll move to the bachelor's than it was to then sign up for an integrated master's the other way. And I chose and went to the University of Nottingham, which I very, very much chose looking back because of their green chemistry, sustainable chemistry credentials, really. They have a big online, or they used to have a very big online presence on YouTube. They were one of these first. They did really cool science videos, basically. And I think, you get a lot of those videos now, but back in, it must have been just over 10 years ago, I was looking to apply. They were the only ones really doing fun, silly experiments and posting videos of them. So that was a big reason as well. But certainly the fact that they were tuned into green chemistry, that was a big, big thing for me.
Okay. So now that you've kind of, let's say, finished your degree, how did things actually start to unfold for you at this point? Like, what did your journey look like from this point onwards, basically?
Yeah, and I think as well, to take a step back from that and the year in industry placement, so in your second year, you start applying for these placements, these internships, so that you spend my program, you spend your third year in industry whilst doing a little shortened version of the courses online as well. Now, I applied and applied and applied, and I didn't get anywhere at all. There wasn't, I think, to be honest, if I reflect back, I don't think my applications were strong and human enough for me, which is something I've very much learned since leaving university now, actually. But yeah, at the time, it was quite hard, to be honest, because I'd be applying to these big industry companies, and some of them I got a few stages in, and some of them I just never heard anything back. So that was quite a hard, but then eventually I was able to transition back onto a third year at university still, which actually ended up being one of the best rowing years of my life. So there were positives to that as well that I was able to do. But yeah, that was quite an interesting and tricky time, and I certainly learnt a lot through that.
Since we're on that topic of doing the internship, because I think doing an industry year is really can make or break for some people, because when you come out of 3-year degree at the end, you don't have any experience and you have no idea kind of where to apply even for some cases. So would you say that really helped you to get an insight into industry, I suppose? Was that something you found quite helpful?
That was really, really useful, just to get the idea of what it's actually like, because I suppose in A-levels and at university, you learn a lot of theory. You learn, this is certain reactions you need to know. And going into industry, you see how you apply that to have a job, first of all, and to make a business money, essentially. So it was quite interesting because it went from very wide theory to very narrow application. And being able to talk the language of industry was quite useful as well. So I would really suggest anybody who has an opportunity to either spend a year in industry at university or even just during the summer, absolutely to do it. You can get paid, and it's quite an interesting and really useful experience as well.
Brilliant. So then how did things start unfolding for you after you finished your degree?
Yeah, so I graduated back in 19. I moved back home to start with, and I did apply when I was still in my final year for some graduate schemes. Unfortunately, I didn't get onto any. And then essentially I was just applying for jobs that were still related to the lab to start with. So the first job I got was actually as a lab technician in a school in Weybridge, which was really fun, part-time, kept me busy, got to have lots of fun with the other lab technicians. I was actually covering for somebody who was out for maternity leave, so it was a really good experience. A nice way to start earning money whilst I was still applying for jobs that I could see myself in a longer term career with. And then during that time, as I said, I kept on applying, and I actually started with a contractor role in industry as an analytical scientist. Now, throughout my whole 4 years at university, I probably spent about 2 lectures on analytical chemistry. So this is things like chromatography, and UV and IR. So it's not something I've spent much time at university or at school on. So even having a job in science, it was then a big learning curve to, again, that applied chemistry that is useful for industry. But yeah, that year as a contractor in industry was really just an awesome time to learn. It was almost like university again for a year, learning a new subject, but applied in the lab every day. And helping to solve business challenges at the same time.
So when you're doing your the technician role you mentioned about in the Weybridge School, how long did you do that for then?
How long was that? I think it was probably 2 or 3 months, maybe. Really fab experience. Essentially, I was going to be happy to do that until I got a longer term job in industry, which is what I was aiming for at the time. It was genuinely really fun because it was preparing the experiments for the students to then do in the schools. Now I got the chance to be a bit hands on in the lab and get to know the teachers and understand what the students were learning as well. So yeah, I think it was about 2 or 3 months or so.
Okay, cool. So I know after finishing degree, a lot of people don't really realize or underestimate specifically how messy that phase can be looking for jobs. So how would you describe your experience in terms of how you dealt with, not things going to plan or hitting those, kind of brick walls where you're applying for hundreds and hundreds of jobs, but nothing actually, coming your way kind of thing. How did you deal with that experience? Because I think that in itself can be quite interesting for some people who are really, finding it difficult as well.
Yeah, it was tricky. It was tricky because I knew I was good. I knew I had something to give and something to add to businesses, but I just wasn't being seen at all. What advice would I give to someone in that position? Keep your head up, because it is hard, especially at the moment. There are only a certain number of jobs out there. That is how it is. For me, it was important to apply for any role that went towards my overall ambition. So for that role of the lab technician, yes, that isn't something I saw myself doing for many, many years personally, but it was a step towards the right direction. It showed that I was keen to get working. I was keen to contribute and to learn on the job whilst it's still being directly applied to what I would want to do further on. So yeah, my 2 main pieces of advice is just apply. You never know what kind of role is out there that could help you just have a little stepping stone, and to keep your head up with it as well, because it can feel tough and it can feel like, rejection a lot of the time, but actually is sometimes, it is 1% of the people that apply to a job get selected. And actually a lot of the time it's even less than that.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's perfect. So for someone listening to us right now who has no idea about what strategy or sustainability even means, how would you explain what day-to-day looks like for you?
So day-to-day for me, it looks like helping labs to act more sustainably. So labs have, as I said early on, they can be very, very wasteful in a lot of areas. And this is just naturally how labs have been, really. Because safety and quality are the 2 most important things in a lab. You need to keep people safe. You need to keep the environment safe as well. You're not just pouring chemicals down the sink because this is a problem. And we want the quality of the experiments we do to be good. So we don't want things like contamination to take place. As those 2 have taken priority, it's unfortunately creates a lot of waste in how we do things. And during my time in industry, I actually saw this firsthand and saw not only environmental and that kind of waste, but a cost waste as well, financially, spending money where we probably didn't need to because it was just the done way of doing things. So really the strategy behind that is taking a look at the entire lab, at what we do, and pinpointing places where we are using more energy, using more plastic, using more waste than we need to. And after seeing that in my industry lab, I actually spent a year at Imperial College London, where I worked there as a sustainability initiatives coordinator, which was essentially guiding their 1,600 labs to act more sustainably. So that was the biggest learning curve for me, for sure, because it went from understanding theory to then educating and encouraging other scientists to engage with sustainability initiatives.
So the Imperial role, was that part of the role you were currently, the industry place you were doing, was that through that, or was that separate initiative?
No, it was separate actually. So what I did was, so after the contract role in industry, I then spent 3 years on a permanent role there, at which point I started to think about sustainability. So at this point, I was making my own lab sustainable. We got my own lab certified as well with a gold award, which was
Nice.
really cool.
Congratulations. Yeah,
Thank you. And then really I wanted to do more of it. I wanted to have the ability to do this on a industry or on a company scale. And I saw this opportunity at Imperial, and it just kind of seemed too good to be true. It was literally a role dedicated to engaging labs and offices to sign up to these sustainability initiatives. So these include things like LEAF, which is the Laboratory Efficiency Assessment Framework, and My Green Lab, which are two ways to engage with sustainability and use a framework really to guide you through that. And then you get gold, green awards, these kinds of things afterwards.
That's amazing because like you mentioned about sustainability, I think a lot of people don't realize how important this space is. I know you mentioned about your time when you applied to your university and you looked at their kind of page and the YouTube stuff they put forward. What would you say drew you into this space specifically? Was there kind of a moment where it clicked, like this is what I want to kind of go towards, especially supporting sustainability? What was the kind of I would say the trigger that kind of triggered you towards that direction?
No, it's interesting actually. So when I was still at university, so I did a master's project on battery technology. We know that batteries are going to be and are today a very important way to improve our sustainability. How we make those batteries more sustainable is a whole other topic, but we know it's definitely a step in the right direction. So as I left uni, that was something I was interested in pursuing, battery style research. So the research that I would do would then create a product or a service that helps people to be more sustainable, whether it be cars or something else. I couldn't find a job like that, which is why I ended up moving into this analytical chemistry where sustainability wasn't something I really thought about for 3 of those years in that role. And then I came across this certification that you could do. And it kind of opened my eyes that you can act sustainably, even if your output isn't a sustainability product or service. So what my role really was to do was whatever your research was, whether you were researching cancer research or you were researching bugs and how they fly, like Imperial had some crazy research groups. It was all about doing that in a sustainable way. And it was really seeing this certification that was the kickstart for that during my time in industry. And it made me realize just how you could apply sustainability to any type of science out there at all.
Okay. Because I think, like you mentioned, about sustainability is a key factor in a lot of industry now, not just industry, in terms of even places of education establishments. If they've got to meet a certain sustainability factor within the framework they're working with. Would you say the space is growing in general and people are going into it even more now?
Yeah, big time. Big time. You see, so universities, first of all, they all have very ambitious net zero plans as well. Most of them are 2040 is what they're aiming for. So that's only 14 years away now to be net zero. I remember a few years ago when these were first being published, it was like, so it's a while away, 25 years or so. It's only 14 years now. All of the universities have actually already made some really significant steps towards that. They are, as you do with these kinds of projects, you focus on the big, easy wins to start with, And then you start getting, okay, we still got a lot of carbon, but they are more intensive, harder to deal with things. So really, it's a big thing across science, but across all industries, right? Because the UK government, for example, a requirement for 2050 for net zero. So businesses have to be net zero. The European Green Deal is the same thing. So every business that's out there will need to be net zero by 2050. Although that goal is still 25 years away, many of the leading companies actually have goals earlier than that because they see it as an advantage to them, right? To be able to say that we are sustainable in our operations and in everything we do it's a winnable metric. It's something that can win them more business. It's something that they also want to do because it's the right thing to do as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, out of all my time looking at sustainability, especially in the science space, it's never been bigger than it is now, and I only see it growing.
100%. I think just to touch base, add to what you've said as well, is one of the things I noticed as well over the last 2-3 years, I would say maybe there's a big significant increase in terms of awareness about these roles as well. I think within companies. So one of the things I do in my role, when you came in and you shared your journey during the Green Careers Week, we try to highlight on specific careers that are working on sustainability or potentially students can go into in the future. And I think it's really important for companies to come forward and offer sort of work experience opportunities and give more internships out as well to students so they can start getting a feel of what it's like as well, because they're none the wiser unless you kind of shed some light on it. So I think more work needs to be done to kind of raise awareness as well. So we try to do our best in schools, but ultimately I think local businesses specifically, need to come forward, as we all have a goal to meet, of course. And I think it's important that we work together collectively, and that'll be really important as a whole for the world, as ultimately.
Yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely. And I think, as you say, there are some roles that are sustainability focused, like your day-to-day is all
Yeah.
sustainability. There's also, and this is something I'd love industry to encourage as well, is that sustainability is kind of everybody's responsibility as well. So my current role back in industry, which I do alongside my Sustainable Steps business, sustainability is not my day-to-day, but I incorporate it into my day-to-day with everything I do. And businesses are really looking for those people to lead them forward as well, because sometimes you don't need a sustainability expert to help in certain areas. You actually need somebody who knows that area really, really well to do it in a more sustainable way, because they will know best. So my encouragement as well is for those who have a passion in sustainability, which I hope is many of the listeners, is that it doesn't have to be, your role does not have to be 100% sustainability to make a really big difference. I think one of the people at the Green Careers talk was talking about how it's all about finding the biggest levers actually that you can pull to make the biggest difference. And actually, sometimes that's not in a sustainability role. It's in a place that isn't doing much on sustainability. And you can be that lever to make the biggest difference there in particular. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So I think you mentioned about sustainable steps, which I want to go into. But when you look back at your career, what would you say helped you move forward in your current stuff you're doing in your career?
Following my interests and my passion, not staying still just because it's comfortable. It's a bit scary to do that sometimes, to go. The move to Imperial was a scary one for me because it was leaving behind something I knew, something I was good at, and trying something completely different that was new and scary to me. And I had to establish myself in that space as well. But the advice I would give is to follow where you see yourself passionate about and where you see you have an impact that you want to have as well. And I really do think if you follow those two things, everything else will follow behind it, will be okay. Because what I've been able to do now is integrate those things together to create Sustainable Steps now, which is looking both from my experience in industry and in the public sector and in sustainability overall, to bring it all together and make something out of it in particular.
I think it's really interesting listening to you, because it doesn't sound like you had everything sort of planned out or mapped out, and it sounds more like you explored You took opportunities, especially the Imperial role, and you figured things out along the way. And I think that's something people don't hear enough about, because they just think everything has to be set in stones and has to happen the perfect way. But that's not necessarily the case. You can, pivot away from things, and actually it might be better for you. And I think you're right about saying a lot of people just feel comfortable in their positions. And as humans, we don't like change. So all of a sudden, when you start thinking about other options, like, oh, I don't think this is good for me because it might go pear-shaped, or whatever it may be, we just automatically prepare ourselves for failure. But I think you're right in terms of, yes, you need to take opportunities. You need to actually follow your passion. You need to do things that's going to make a difference in the wider society as well, because just placing, work on whatever you're doing in the moment, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think following your passion is really important to explore that side that you never thought you had, and put yourself in a position where you might not feel comfortable. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And I think the three of us that came to your careers talk, we all gave the same message of our careers have not been linear at all. There are some people whose careers are, and they love it, and that's what they do. And there's nothing wrong in that at all. But it's also understanding that might not be right for you. It hasn't been right for me up until this point. I've needed to learn and explore different things. The plan I had, I planned to be a physiotherapist, and then I planned to do chemistry that will help people act more sustainable. And either of those two things have happened. And I've found something else completely that is actually what I love more than both of those things. So yeah, just follow your gut and follow your passion with a bit of strategic thinking as well, for sure.
Of course. So let's absolutely, I think, definitely. In terms of let's talk Sustainable Steps. Who is Sustainable Steps, and when did they come about?
Brilliant. Yeah. So Sustainable Steps is something I started back in January 2025. It very much started as a blog, to be honest. It was a place for me to write down my thoughts all about sustainable science. I thought it'd be something quite fun to do. So this is something I do alongside my full-time employment in industry. And yeah, I was like, a blog would be quite fun. Give me a way to keep connected to some of the people I've met in the sustainable science world, keep connected to those who are interested and passionate about sustainable science. And I thought that could be quite fun. And then I thought, there's some more things I could do. So then I started posting on LinkedIn a lot, and that really gained a lot of traction. So I went from maybe 300 connections or so to now just under 1,500. And that was with very limited outreach. It was from me posting and people seeing and being really interested in it. So at that point, I was like, okay, there's something here that people want to interact and see as well. And that led me to being able to talk at the Royal Society of Chemistry. So they had an event for the Analytical Research Forum, and they reached out to me simply because of my posts on LinkedIn and said, we'd love to get your thoughts on a panel discussion that we have. Actually, I've got a picture of it just there. It was a really fantastic day. And since then, I've been able to interact with the Royal Society of Chemistry on some more things as well. So I've been able to sit on the Analytical Sustainable Working Group. That's been really cool. So we can try and look at how we can act more sustainable as an analytical community. And I was also able to sit on their decision panel for their sustainable lab fund. So they had lots of funding to give away to labs. We had hundreds and hundreds of applications, and we were able to sit down and make sure the money went to the right projects. And that was quite a very eye-opening experience, actually, because there were some amazing labs across the UK and across the world. So we had applications from Malaysia, from Africa, absolutely incredible applications that we were able to fund a lot of as well. And as Sustainable Steps moves forward, we've launched a YouTube channel now. So on there, what I do is I review products that are helping labs to be more sustainable. So if you go on there today, you'll see there's one reviewing a paper bin. So most bins in the lab are made out of plastic and they get incinerated, whereas paper can actually make massive, massive savings on the carbon. So I really test these bins out to make sure they're suitable for labs, so labs aren't going to get surprised when they start using them. And we've also able to do a video going behind the scenes at a company that's helping labs to be more sustainable as well. So we've been able to go into the workshop of Rally Inventions, who make this thing called the eye wash, where they wash single-use plastic cell counter slides that are used in a lot of medicine, and they can be washed and used again up to 50 times. So the amount of carbon we're saving just from using it once to twice is 50%. So let alone the incredibles you're making when you go from 1 to 50 times. And that's just the start of it, really. There's things we're looking into with consultancy, so helping to guide labs to be more sustainable on a very direct basis, to go in there, trainings and workshops for bigger teams. It's really grown into something I had never imagined it would.
That's fantastic. Just goes to show how big social media can be in terms of getting attraction from all sides of chemistry just from your posts. It goes to show like how big of an effect it has on, wider kind of, world we're in. But yeah, in terms of with sustainable steps, like how do you juggle between your industry placement and this alongside it? How do you juggle between those?
Yeah, it's a tough balance. It's very much kept apart. My industry role is very much my 9 till 5, and my sustainable steps is almost my hobby on the side, to be fair. So I do spend a lot of my weekends working on this and a lot of my evenings and very early mornings. I do that because I enjoy it. I'm not being forced to by anybody other than myself. And it's really just an area that I can express my passion for this kind of thing. Well, my passion for sustainability and to connect with this network. So the balance is tricky. It's something we spoke about just before we started the podcast, but it's really being strategic about my time as well. So making sure that the time I spend on sustainable steps is as actionable as it can be. So the time I spent is helping people as much as possible. And, I really enjoy my industry role as well. So it's not to say that I'm, working my 9 till 5 and then I'm having fun outside. I have fun very much in both, really helping the business that I work for to move forward, to do their own thing, but also helping labs outside of my industry role to act more sustainably as well. So it's a tricky balance, but one I'm able to do just by following the passion, really.
I think it's these moments where you kind of do things for sake of passion, let's say, are ones that shape you the most, I think, in life. And what you're doing is already amazing. So it's good to see with Sustainable Step coming forward. But I was going to just kind of delve into, where do you see Sustainable Steps in, let's say, 5 years' time? Like, what would you expect to kind of have achieved by in 5 years' time?
I would like... Interesting. So the number one priority that actually comes to my head is that every lab is thinking about sustainability. Now, I would love them to know that because of Sustainable Steps, but anybody out there, any program, any framework that's out there helping labs to think more sustainably, that is the end goal. That in every single lab we have, they are running as efficiently, as low carbon and as low energy as possible. That really, really is the overall goal. And what I really want to see with Sustainable Steps is they are a leader in influencing that from happening. So I'd love to continue partnering with brands and really spotlighting what they do. If we talk 5 years' time, I'd love to have my own conference, to be honest. One where, because there's loads of science conferences out there today which bring together leaders in industry, bring together academia and leaders in research. I would love one of those just focused on lab sustainability. So I have the joy of going to a lot of conferences and talking about how sustainability in research is important, but I would love a big event bringing everyone together focused just on lab sustainability, because I think for me the most important thing is getting this community together of scientists, because scientists achieve absolutely incredible things in their day to day. All the research being done on healthcare, all the research being done on energy, all the engineers out there as well creating these incredible things. I would love all those minds to be able to come together and help pave the way for us making research, science, industry more sustainable. Yeah, so I've not really given any concrete goals of what I want steps to do, but I really want it to be a key resource for people to be able to make that change and really bring that community together to be able to make change to happen.
I think one of the things that needs to happen, like you said, bringing everybody together in a space where they can discuss these things as well as a kind of conference style, as you mentioned. And I think more people I feel like what needs to happen is, if you really want to meet the 2050 goal set by the UK government, more companies, industry, businesses need to come forward and look at ways to make their businesses more sustainable. And I think sustainable steps can help with that. So we need more people to come to you, really, so you can show them the way. And ultimately, businesses need to, I think, take those initiatives more seriously, which is going to be a target for everyone. And so we need to work together. I think collectively, as a multi-agency approach, everyone coming together, using their, expertise really in their kind of way to support the sustainability world. But yeah, no, I think that's 5-year framework. I think that's a good way to look at it without kind of pinpointing particular milestones. But no, that sounds great. I think you're aiming towards something that's going to pave the way for the future generations, which is what we want to be doing in a sustainable way. Yeah. Brilliant. So in terms of, I think a lot of people think success is, for example, becoming the next millionaire or billionaire. Has your idea of success changed over time?
Massively. I think my idea of success when I left uni was to make money. It was to be as rich as I could, mansions, supercars, whatever I could.
Yeah.
And that really has changed. And I think, weirdly, the first success for me is just to be a good person, right? To be a good member of the community and to be able to help other people where I can, because I know that by doing that, then that help will be reciprocated to me. When I think more from a career point of view, it's all about having a positive impact for me. Now, I'm not trying to build steps to make me a multimillionaire. That's not what it's about at all. It's all about what impact we can have for the industry, for the planet, for everything, right? Because for me, that is the thing that's going to keep me working, keep me motivated, keep me happy. I think success is a lot to do with happiness and purpose. And for me, Sustainable Steps gives me that purpose, that direction to be able to make a positive change in this world, which to me is, at this point, it's my focus to really make that positive impact.
I think you're right. A lot of people, the success is different at the beginning, and very quickly, and as you start growing, you realize, it's not about making the most amount of money. It's about how much impact you can have people around you and your, or wider society. For me, I've always wanted to be in a career whereby I can impact people in a good way, and I think I'm trying to do that as much as I can. But in terms of like from what you've seen currently in your career so far, what would you say separates people who actually progress from where they are to those who are just kind of stuck in their own ways? I know you kind of delved into that earlier on, but I just want to kind of go back on that a little bit, because sometimes when you're stuck in one position, what can they be doing to kind of do a bit more and progress?
It's hard.
Because the way I see it is, a lot of people have potential, but not everyone moves forward.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of hidden potential. I've read a lot of books on this kind of topic. Doesn't make it any easier, I'll tell you that. The most important thing for me is realizing, because what it's usually about is knowing what the secure way is. So even though it's not 100%, some people would say that their current path isn't their 100%. It's not the thing that releases their full potential. But they know what it is. They know it's a 50%, let's just say. They see the potential over here that's 90%, 80%, 100%. But it's scary. The fear of not knowing if that's going to be an 80% or maybe a 20%, it is scary, don't get me wrong. However, don't forget that this is going to be a 50% and it is. I think for me, the Imperial decision, personally, was knowing that I could try it. I could try this 100%. And if it doesn't work, I can try something else again. And I've survived. I've lived on, right? At the time, it felt like a really, really scary decision. But when you do it once or twice, you realize that you come out of it alive, and you come out of it with not just alive and beaten down, but alive and you've learnt things from it as well. Even if it goes terribly, you've definitely learnt lessons from it. Even if that lesson is, well, I'm never doing that again, that's still a lesson that you won't have learnt if you don't do it. And I think for me as well, there's been times where I've gone, is this an opportunity I would regret not taking? So not thinking about should I do it, should I not? But if I don't do it, am I going to look back at myself in 5-10 years' time and go, what if you did do that? What if? And that's the kind of way I'm trying to think now as I build Sustainable Steps, is what if I didn't do this? Would I kick myself 10 years down the line? And actually that helps get over that scary stage of going, okay, this is scary. Yes, it might be 20%. And what if it is 20%, Ali? What happens? I move on and I never do it again. That's all it is.
Yeah.
I think as well, posting on LinkedIn at first was scary for me. It's very natural for me to be on camera and to talk to people and to put myself out there about my views. It doesn't mean it wasn't blooming scary the first time I posted, the first time I did a video and posted it out there. It is scary, but nothing's happened. You put your views out there. Some people disagree with it. That was something I was really scared about doing, first of all, is people going, well, actually, I think you're wrong here. That has happened. And I'll tell you what, you either one, talk to that person because you think they've got a good point and you've got something to learn from, or sometimes you see that opinion is just not very credible. And you know what? I've actually laughed far more than I've cried over this kind of thing. I think I saw someone comment something along the lines of, paper needs carbon, so carbon is good. And I just had a very good laugh to myself because this didn't feel like much of a comment to me personally. So yeah, give it a go. Don't be scared. It is scary, but just take the step, take the leap. That was always been my suggestion.
I think you're right about, you're going to get, whenever you do something different, you're going to get people that will have negative things to say. You're going to have people that will maybe not agree with you. And I think we've kind of just said, I think what comes down to is not having those regrets. At least you can't, not going to be in 5 years time like, oh, I wish I did this, and then all of a sudden, at least you tried it. You can say, you know what, it didn't go to plan. But yeah, definitely go try it and then give it a go. Sometimes it might be out of your comfort zone, but there's, that's the whole point. Maybe something you didn't realize you had in you, but you doing it, you found a new passion, a new thing that you really might even open up a whole new business idea for those individuals, and that's how a lot of businesses start anyway. And I know one of the, I would say from our conversation today, one of the things I took away mainly is that you don't have to have everything, thought out early on. And I think it's okay to deviate away from your initial plans, and things don't always go to plan as well. So I know we talked about how things were at 18 for you and then to where you are now. If you could go back to your 18-year-old self, what would you say to yourself?
18. I was already kind of following my passion. So I'm not sure I would say that. I think my biggest advice would be, don't be scared to create your own role. And what I mean by that, even in jobs that exist out there, don't be scared to try and evolve it as you go. So I think very much when I left school, it was, I'm going to be a scientist. And to be fair, I have ended up being a scientist. So hands up there. But around that, I've been able to build something that didn't even exist before. And industry, academia, business, they are open to that. As long as you can show that role will bring value and impact, any role out there can and will exist. Now, you might need to think how that impact actually is. So unfortunately, we live in a world where sustainability isn't the number one priority. So you've heard me talk a lot about cost savings, and that's very intentional because for some people, the cost savings, the thing that will make them act more sustainably. Sometimes it's the sustainability that will get people to save more money. It's a mix. But to really think about what you could contribute and how that would be impactful, and talking to people. Don't be scared to talk to your manager and go, look, I've come up with this idea that I really think could help a business, or really think it could help the research that we're doing. That's how jobs start. That's how roles, opportunities start. They're not always decided at the top of a company by the CEOs or by the deans of universities or by head teachers in schools. They're very often created by people who are working and they see amazing opportunities and they go, well, we should do this. And you write it up, you do a proposal and you share that with the right people. And then suddenly you've got the perfect role for you, something that you're passionate about, something that you know will have a positive impact in the world. So that would be my advice to me. Very long way of saying it. But my advice to me would be, don't constrain yourself to the roles and the jobs that you see on a job description. Create your own role.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, I think that's really helpful advice, actually. And for anyone listening and thinking about options going forward, it's a wider world out there. When you're in school, you're kind of in a bubble. We don't really realize what is out there. And I think really important to have those. And thank you for sharing a reflection. Definitely. That's really helpful. Ben, I've enjoyed our conversation so far. I feel like you've highlighted some of the important stuff we should be focusing on. You've shared your career journey and you've talked about where you started off from where you are now. And it's fantastic to hear you're doing great stuff with Sustainable Steps. And I honestly wish you all the best with Sustainable Steps as well, because it's such a great initiative which can, help the society in such a bigger way, without even realizing, in a bigger scale. And it's something that you started off as a blog initially, then to LinkedIn, to know where it is. It's fantastic to see, the way it's going. And really appreciate you coming on today. And it's been a great conversation. And I really enjoyed all of this. And I feel like you've highlighted some key things that a lot of people can benefit from. So I appreciate you coming on. To everyone listening, if this episode gave you something to think about, share it with someone who might need it. Because sometimes just hearing someone else's journey can change how you see your own. And I'll see you in the next episode, hopefully for another Pathways to Success of somebody different. So Ben, once again, thank you very much.